William Wright was appointed to the U.S. Chemical Safety and Hazards Investigation Board in September 2006. Immediately prior to his appointment to the board, Mr. Wright served 5 years as chairman of the Department of Defense Explosive Safety Board. Mr. Wright served in the Navy Special Operations Explosive Ordnance Disposal Community, and Mr. Wright earned his bachelor's degree and a master's of business administration from the University of Puget Sound, and from the master's of arts degree in the National Security and Strategic Studies from the U.S. Naval War College.
Thank you, Chairman Miller, Ranking Member McKeon, and distinguished members of the committee. I am William Wright, testifying today on behalf of the U.S. Chemical Safety Board, including members William Wark and Gary Vischer. I commend you for convening today's hearing and for your leadership on this issue. Mr. Chairman, the disastrous accident at Imperial Sugar is but the latest of a long series of tragic dust explosions going back over decades. Dust explosions kill and injure American workers, destroy jobs and businesses, and shatter communities. No one knows that better than Tammy Miser. After losing her brother Sean to a dust explosion, she has courageously dedicated her life to drawing attention to this deadly hazard. Mr. Chairman, these human tragedies are preventable. Without accumulated dust, the most catastrophic type of dust explosion will not occur. Good engineering and safety practices to prevent dust explosions have existed for decades in the standards of the National Fire Protection Association, NFPA. In 2003, the CSB investigated 3 catastrophic dust explosions in North Carolina, Kentucky, and Indiana that caused a total of 14 deaths and dozens of injuries. We found that all 3 facilities had long-standing dust hazards. State OSHA officers had inspected all 3 facilities prior to the accidents, but the dust hazards were never recognized or cited. Furthermore, the CSB determined that all 3 explosions could likely have been prevented if the facilities had implemented NFPA recommended practices. Like these others, our preliminary findings indicate the explosion at Imperial Sugar appears to have been a multi-stage event. An unknown primary event most likely dislodged sugar dust that had accumulated over a long period on surfaces throughout the facility. This dislodged dust fueled devastating secondary explosions that killed and burned workers. This facility was decades old and had many horizontal surfaces where dust could collect, such as overhead floor joists, rafters, and ductwork. Witnesses have described substantial snow-like accumulations of sugar dust on these surfaces. Most employees and contractors have received little training on the explosion hazard from accumulated dust, and no witnesses have indicated that the facility had a program to fully implement NFPA standards for combustible dust. Our investigation to date clearly links the accident at Imperial to many earlier dust explosions investigated by the CSB and others. In November 2006, the CSB completed a comprehensive study of the problem of combustible dust. We determined this problem was nationwide and urgent. The problem shows no sign of diminishing, and in fact, the Imperial accident last month is the deadliest industrial dust explosion in the United States since 1980. Our dust study identified 281 dust fires and explosions that occurred at U.S. businesses between 1980 and 2005, causing 119 deaths and 718 injuries. And since 2005, about 70 additional dust explosions have been reported. The CSB study called on OSHA to develop a comprehensive regulatory standard for dust explosions in general industry, to improve training of OSHA inspectors, and to require better communication of dust hazards for workers using material safety data sheets. And as an interim measure, we also recommended that OSHA establish a national emphasis program to better enforce existing standards. And we commend OSHA for having undertaken such a program in October 2007. OSHA's existing requirements, including the General Duty Clause and the Housekeeping Standard, apply to combustible dust hazards. However, a comprehensive dust standard would be more effective by focusing both employers' and inspectors' attention on this hazard and the steps that should be taken to prevent dust explosions and fires. In 1987, OSHA issued a standard to prevent grain dust explosions. This standard has cut deaths and injuries from grain dust explosions by 60%. The grain dust standard requires a formal written housekeeping program with cleaning schedules, identification of priority cleaning areas, and the immediate safe removal of any dust accumulations over 1/8 of an inch. In addition to housekeeping, industrial facilities need to consider proper equipment design, maintenance, building design, explosion venting, and control of ignition sources. Finally, workers must be made aware of the hazards of combustible dust and trained on the safe methods for working within dust environments. The NFPA codes contain recommendations on all these topics. And like all other voluntary consensus standards, the NFPA dust codes will need to be carefully reviewed and adapted to create regulations that are reasonable and appropriate for a wide variety of affected industries and workplaces. Mr. Chairman, we urge the prompt development of a comprehensive dust standard as we recommended in our 2006 dust study. This will not only save lives, protect U.S. jobs and businesses, but also protect our communities. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today, sir.